Magic. Magic on the battlefield can lead to all sorts of shenanigans, and I like shenanigans. The influence of Tzeentch can be added to the battlefield with extra rules for the warp's influence on your game. Any faction can use these magical abilities, and they're not psychic keyword abilities. So we don't get the psychic phase back. Many awes. I know. These rules can be used in any form of play. There's no 3 defined ways to play in 10th edition, even though people keep using the terms for open play, narrative play, and match play from like 8th and 9th edition. The match play mission deck is away, crusade is away, balanced play gets mentioned as a term in the tournament companion, but good luck playing a balanced game of 40k. No one knows what these mean, so Games Workshop has an any kind of play. However you want to play, there are some optional rules if you want some extra mechanics. These rules can be found in White Dwarf 514, but I'll go through them so that this video is a useful resource, and I will cover how influential the rules can be. Extra rules should be spice, a little flavour to the game, but not overpowering to the point where it is the only thing that matters. Your units and the primary and secondary missions should stay central to the game. These rules are warping reality. You can spend warping reality dice to trigger powerful effects, and which ones you have access to depends on the dice rolled. It's a little bit like how the Eldar Strands of Fate mechanic works in the Seer Council. At the start of the first battle round, roll 6d6. Each number corresponds to one of the different abilities. These will be abilities that both players have access to, but it's only the player who is favoured that gets to use them. The non-favoured player cannot use them until they become the favoured player. The player going first in the battle round is favoured. At the end of their turn, if they haven't used any of these abilities, then the other player becomes favoured for the start of their turn. Or if the favoured player uses one of these abilities during their turn, then their opponent becomes the favoured player. So who is favoured could switch multiple times in a turn and battle round. I'm glad there is that extra bit to say, yeah, if you don't use this ability, the other player becomes favoured at the start of their turn, because if it wasn't there, the first player could choose for these abilities to not be in effect. One person shouldn't have control over the special rules. That would be like using a twist card, but only one player gets to use that twist, and if they don't use that twist, no one gets to use the twist. That would be effectively what it's like. So if you haven't spent any warping reality dice during your turn, there is one more dice added to the pool. If you don't take magic out of the magic jar, then the magic jar gets shaken up and that makes more magic. And that extra dice may give your opponent the ability that they were looking for. If they really wanted ability number 3, and there was no 3s, maybe the new dice is a 3. And just so the dice don't gradually deplete over the game, from the second battle round onwards, at the start of the battle round, you roll 3 more dice and add that to the pool. So what do they do? What are the abilities? What are the things that we can do with these magical dice? Any wands are incorporeal forms. The mists of the Immaterium descend, rendering warriors incorporeal and allowing them to pass through solid matter. It's used in your charge phase or your movement phase. One of your units that makes a normal move, advanced move, or charge move can move through terrain features and enemy models. If making a normal move or advanced move, you cannot end that move within engagement range of the enemy. So if the enemy has tried to move block you, you can just pass through them and keep going. If there's a massive tower in the way that isn't ruins, it's a solid object that you can't go through, well, actually, now you can. Charging around the corner of a solid building gets much easier when you can go straight through the corner of the solid building. 2 is Wicked Salvos. Those who fall under the influence of the warp entities soon abandon all caution and mercy, unleashing vengeance upon the enemies without regard for their allies. In your shooting phase, one of your units can target enemy units that are within engagement range of other friendly units. And this has no negative effect on your units. It's not like in the Brood Brothers Auxilia, where you can shoot into a unit that's engaged with a Genestealer Cult unit, but you might blow up some Genestealer Cult. This is the same thing, with no risk to the Genestealer Cultists, and it doesn't cost 2 command points. If you want to hold on to an objective with one unit that's in engagement range, and you also want to shoot the enemy unit, do so. Very good for shooting armies. Or we have Empiric Subsummation, which brings back the line of sight rules from 8th edition. In your shooting phase, after picking one of your units to shoot, one piece of area terrain stops using the visibility rules for that piece of area terrain, and they're replaced with normal visibility rules apply. You will see that on things like the barricades and the pipes, it already has normal visibility rules apply. If you can see the model, then you can shoot the model. What this gets around is the woods rule, and more likely the ruins rule. The area of the ruin blocks line of sight from one side or the other, regardless of actual line of sight visibility. This returns it to, it's nice that you have that corner of a ruin. I can see across it though, with true line of sight, so I'm going to shoot across it. And that lasts for the whole phase on that terrain piece. So multiple of your units could shoot across that ruin, as long as you can actually see the enemy through the walls. But you see what I mean, like on these tournament boards, this is an area of the ruin that's area terrain ruin, but there's nothing actually there to block visibility, apart from the rules saying ruins block visibility. This would make it easier to shoot across those ruins. It doesn't remove the ruins entirely, it doesn't say pretend this area terrain is not there, it's just using true line of sight instead of the ruin rules. With a Thuric Storm, the winds of the warp rise up to ensnare the foe, surrounding them with an impenetrable storm of coruscating energy. This is only used in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit is selected to attack. Until the end of the phase, one of your units cannot be selected as the target of the range attack if they are more than 18 inches away. That's great for saying, okay, yeah, this unit was going to be shot off an objective at long range. Well, now it's not. However, the enemy unit that was going to make those attacks can pick a different unit as the target of those attacks. And it won't protect your unit from enemy units that are closer. Going, ah ha ha, you're too far away. Oh, yeah, right, forgot about you. 5 is Fate's Shield. The strong-willed may draw insight from the warp, enabling them to avoid a certain fate. Your opponent's shooting phase, or either player's fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, one of your units that was selected as a target gets a 4+ invulnerable save until the end of the phase. If you charge an enemy and it doesn't go right, and you're about to get smushed, let's have a 4+ invulnerable save. That could help a lot. Especially for units like Orcs that have high toughness already, but they haven't got a very good save. Their 5+ armor save becomes a 4+ invulnerable save. A warping reality dice in the dice pool showing a 6 is Transposition. A downy uppy uppy downy. Those brave enough to dare the warp may traverse that insane realm to outflank their foes. At the end of the fight phase, either player's fight phase, one of your units that's not within engagement range and wasn't just set up on the battlefield this turn can be removed from the battlefield and placed into strategic reserves. If one of your units was completing a secondary mission, and now that that mission is completed, they don't need to be in that place anymore, get them into safety. If they were about to be swarmed and shot to death, get them to safety. And it's any unit. If your Imperial Knight is going to be shot to death because it's out in the open, what about if it wasn't there? Because the favored player can move back and forth, you could expect to use one warping reality and then your opponent uses warping reality immediately. Like you use a 3 to shoot through a ruin to shoot the enemy, they use Fate's Shield so that they have a 4+ invulnerable save. And then you go back to being favored. But they may not, so expect to be able to use one of these on your turn and no more. But some of these happen in your opponent's turn, like the 4, the Etheric Storm. But if the active player hasn't yet used one of these dice, they are still the favored player and only the favored player can spend the dice. So you may want to wait until the final moment to use one of these dice. If you had been thinking of trading units, as people do in chess and use chess terms with 40k, you move one of your units out in the open to destroy an enemy unit, rather than them getting destroyed in exchange in the enemy turn. Move the unit into the safety of strategic reserves with transposition before they get destroyed. Your opponent can't stop you by using dice before you. Only you are the favored player. So these abilities look to be most powerful for first turn charge armies, like a lot of the Genestealer cult ones, the Biosanctic Brood Surge, the Final Day, Xeno Creed, so many Genestealer cult builds, or the World Eaters. Don't worry about warping reality in the shooting phase, and save it for charging through the wall the enemy is camping. If you can't be in engagement range with them through the wall because they're 1.1 inches away so you can't end your turn within the wall, what if you moved through the wall and the enemies and ended up on the other side of them? That is a valid charge. And because you can do it with any unit, your cavalry, your beasts, your massive vehicles could do that. If you're charging the enemy to tie them up and keep them held within their deployment zone, a unit like your Biosanctic Brood Surge Aberrant that charged in just to restrain the enemy can now have a 4+ invulnerable save on the swing back from their opponent, That goes with their toughness 6. -1 to be wounded if the strength of the attack is higher than strength 6, as long as the aberrants have a character, and does that feel no pain? That's an incredibly tough aberrant unit. Using that in the fight phase will stop your opponent using any of these abilities in your shooting phase, leaving them only with the ability to remove a unit from the board and place it in strategic reserve after the fight phase. That's a good idea, but you are deliberately locking yourself out of the shooting options, if those are available, because it's all on the whims of the dice that Tzeentch gives you. Try it for a game. Use it instead of a twist from the mission deck. Use it in a Crusade game instead of a Crusade Armageddon special rule if you're finding them to be not amazing. Or if you favor one of the other Chaos Gods, why not good old direct cornate violence? Violence always works. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.